Welcome back to the Hodcast, the place for all things construction training. This week, another amazing conversation. We've got Jill Willis. She is the founder of Attract and Engage and the host of a podcast Made in Essex. We talk all things marketing within construction and beyond. She does a lot of amazing things in the Billericay School and part of the Basildon Business Leaders group. She sits on the board there. So this is a great conversation and you'll really enjoy it. So please sit back and enjoy. Jill, how do you sell to people who aren't ready to buy? And maybe why is that the biggest opportunity that we've got?
So you build trust, ultimately. I mean, it's no different from dating. You know, you're not going to immediately say to someone, hey, you know, should we get married? Or, you know, if we're not watching some strange program that's on the television. But you're not going to do that. You're going to gradually build trust. You're going to be likable. You're going to have a good reputation, you know, and eventually, hopefully, when that person's in market, they're going to want to be with you, want to do the next thing, go the next mile. And that's all it is, ultimately. It's building trust. As consumers, whether or not we are buying a washing machine, buying a new car, or if we're a B2B buyer procuring a construction project, you're always in a holding pattern. You are down that bottom of the decision-making wheel, you know, as we describe it. You're not in market. But that doesn't mean you're not consuming brands all the time. You're seeing BMW ads on the television. You're seeing Merc ads on the television. You might not need a new car. But when you do, you know what's going to be front of mind. You know where the reputation, where the trust is. So it's no different in our construction world. It's about building trust early so that when someone is in market, you're far more likely to be considered. Well,
that said, almost like a journalist. It's almost like you were a journalist in a previous life. But you started out as a journalist. How did that shape the way that you communicate and the way that you tell a story, or the storytelling element of marketing?
Well, I suppose that you know, I started out, you know, really early, just did my A-levels and then went in to begin with as the editorial assistant, which ultimately meant I was a bit of a glorified secretary for the editor, but really quickly realised I wanted to be writing some stories. So I was like relentless, hounding the poor man to let me write something. And so what I got a grasp of really early on in what was, you know, this is the late 90s, a very traditional newsroom, you know, there was a fax machine.
For those of you who don't know, for the Gen Zers among you, the fax machine, you used to be able to send a message on paper from one machine to another machine, like an email, but on paper.
Absolutely, and you'd stand next to it for a lot of the time watching paper get clogged up within it. It was literally hellish. But I think the key thing I learned in those first couple of years in a newsroom was that you have to get the hook. No matter, you know, what you're talking about and who you're talking to, whether you're wanting to interest someone in a story or wanting to get a buyer to connect and think that you're potentially the right choice for them, you have to have a hook. You have to have a so what. And then, you know, all the early stories that I'd write would come straight back, you know, like who gives a shit? Like, why are you giving me this? Who gives a shit about this? Find the hook, find the hook, find the hook. So it's kind of just drilled really, really early on to find the so what within a story. And that is a brilliant kind of foundation, I think, for everything that you do going forwards.
Well, you worked in the late 90s in journalism. That must have been a tough place. What was your first day? Do you remember your very first day walking into maybe the editorial office or whatever it was? How did that make you feel?
Well, I suppose daunted, definitely, a bit of trepidation, but also really excited because it's a place I'd always wanted to be. I grew up in the northeast and moved down to London first and then Upminster in Essex, so 12 and then out to Upminster at 14. And right from then, I'd always wanted to be somehow involved in the media. Completely different to like my mum and dad. My dad was like a fabricated welder in the shipyards and on the oil rigs. So I don't think he could even fathom, you know, what on earth that was all about. But, you know, my first work experience was at the Ilford Recorder. that was bloody brilliant, you know. And again, it was an opportunity to just get stuck in and be quite relentless, push myself forward for opportunity. And I think on the first day at Computing, where I started, which was a trade title then for the tech industry, really high readership, you know, actual newspapers were read then. It was a sense of opportunity more than anything else, that I all of a sudden could see that there was this possible career path in front of me. I didn't necessarily know exactly what it would look like, but I was in it now, and it was all for the taking. And I think that's I think what really struck me in those first few weeks. Heavily male-dominated environment, tech industry paper. I think there was maybe one or two other women on the editorial or the design desk who were laying out the paper. That didn't bother me at all. I think ultimately it was a fairly welcoming environment, as long as you were willing to get stuck in and work really hard. And I was, so I fitted in fine.
That sounds like that is almost a direct parallel to the construction industry. It is, you know, as we know, it's historically a male-dominated environment. I mean, arguably it is still a male-dominated environment, but people are welcoming. It's not, you know, it's not all right, love you anymore. Really, like generally speaking, men are pretty respectful. I mean, that's not the what you see on TikTok and all those things, which I sort of see that as a bit of a red herring anyway. But that sort of get in, work hard, and the idea that if you're in, once you're in, you're sort of in. You know, you've sort of made it, and you can go. You know, as we'll find out, you can go anywhere from a, you know, the job that you start in. You know, the thing that I'd love to drill into is the moment that you realised you were good at helping people tell their story, because you've done all the background, you know, the so what, you know, you got an article and they've gone not good enough. Give me a so what. Like, at what point was it, or how long did it take you to get to the point where you go, do you know what? I'm good at this now. I can do this. Oh, my editor, who was a bit of a badass or whatever, is actually gone, oh, that was a good article.
Well, I think it kind of happens. It happens gradually, I suppose, and you start to, in those early years of your career, you start to just gain more confidence and trust of your own ability. But certainly, you know, I moved from being on the editorial desk of a newspaper, as is so often the case. I was headhunted by a PR agency who worked for tech brands, like Hewlett-Packard and Mitel Networks, etc., to work on their enterprise division, which ultimately means the really big tech that's going into companies, not the laptops that you're buying as a consumer from Comet or whatever at the time.
Comet, wow.
And so that for me was a first step. You know, someone's recognizing that I'm doing a good job here. They can see that actually they want me working on the client. And then multiple kind of, you know, high profile launches of huge servers or software releases over the years. I suppose the piece that I felt really, really proud of was my final role in London, if you like, before I decided it was time to work for myself. And that was, I'd reached the role of communications director for Tech UK, which is the trade association for the UK tech industry.
Small company.
Yeah, you know what? The most, honestly, working for a trade association, that like lit something else in me, because you're working on behalf of the members. So yes, you have huge organisations, the biggest tech brands that are based, you know, with UK bases, all parts of the membership, but you've also got a beautiful mix of SME businesses within that as well. And the governmental landscape, the commercial landscape, the regulatory landscape, all affects them massively, whether or not they've got an environment that's conducive to doing good business and growing. And I was their voice piece. So that was absolutely incredible. And the work that we did there around, at the time, the waste recycling directive that was coming in, and what that meant for businesses and how they would need to get rid of their waste, the cost implications of all of that stuff, digital switchover and what that meant. That work I felt really incredibly proud of. And that's where I started to really get a sense that I could, and I really enjoyed listening to a business's perspective and the challenges that they're facing, and then creating the outward story that needed to happen to help them get where they needed to be. That was incredible. I absolutely loved that piece, and that really set me off, I think, on where I am now.
Well, how do you go from writing headlines to building brands? Because that's essentially like where you've moved to. And like, what pulled you towards business ownership?
So I suppose personally, around that time, I met my now husband. He'd also had like maybe 12 or so years in London on the media planning and buying side of things. So his career was much more glamorous than mine, you know. He was at all those media parties and taken on incredible trips. And he had always felt, when we first met, he wanted to own his own business, didn't know what he wanted to do. You know, he'd like always looked at, you know, Richard Branson and the kind of the guys around, you know, he's Essex as well, the guys who had been like, you know, self-made men and had, you know, incredible cars and all that stuff, and aspired to that, but didn't know what he wanted to do. I, on the other hand, had not really thought about owning my own business, but was always up for a bit of a challenge. And so I think we'd been together maybe 6 months. We were like, shall we go for it? Shall we leave our jobs and open up a business? Okay, yeah, let's do it. Didn't have kids. Well, what shall we do? And I think I had a friend who I'd seen open up a cafe business in a different city, and I'd gone over and helped for a week. And I thought, this is business model-wise fairly straightforward. Money in, money out. It's not overly complicated. Why don't we do this? So we found a unit in Romford and started from that unit a cafe business called Taste. A little bit ahead of its time in that it was very well branded with a good brand, as you would hope to expect, along the kind of the Pret and the Eat lines. But it was an independent cafe. So you got the old-fashioned independent cafe vibes that you'd have where you'd go in and the person would build their sandwich for you, or you'd have a wonderful salad bar, that kind of thing. And we then created a franchise model, and then we sold franchises around the UK. Having written the book about how to start and run a sandwich bar, which is an Amazon bestseller, spoken at lots of conferences and things. So leaning on our communications and brand background to, I suppose, really accelerate and amplify what could have just been a single successful cafe into something more. And we did that, I think it was 7 or so, 8 years, around having children and the 2008 recession and all of that lovely stuff towards the end, which was really challenging to navigate. So I can't really remember, what the actual original question was.
I love it. How did you get there? You've just answered it, basically. How did you get there? You decided, you know, with your husband that you were going to leave your jobs and go and start a business. And that, you know, there's an argument that maybe it was easier then before the crash, and you know before 2008 probably a bit easier, maybe after I mean, personally, and certainly in construction, we've been in that recession since 2008. I don't think we've ever got out of it. We're just sort of making the best of what's happening now. We try not to get too political on this podcast. I don't care. I'll tell everyone my politics. I don't bat for a certain team in politics. I'm apart from the sensible. That's sort of what I like. But you built and sold your own cafe. I love cafes, as you could probably tell. But my family have been in cafes and restaurants for years. My dad's his job now is a delivery driver for Tesco, but he was a chef for 25 years, 30 years. I don't know. Some amount of years, more than 3 decades probably. And it's a hard business. It is a hard business. And, you know, you guys probably weren't serving until, you know, he was working sometimes until 11 o'clock midnight, whatever it was. And I'm sure you weren't working in the cafe.
Well, we
at
were
that
at
time.
we weren't, but we were at the beginning, you know. And it was certainly 5:30 a.m. start, usually finished by 4 though. We were your traditional breakfast, lunch kind of offering. But certainly as we grew the franchise, they were challenging times. You know, opening up a unit with one of our franchisees over in Cardiff, going through the construction process, the refurbishment of the unit, over there, you know, for a week or so before the unit's opening, training the team. The first week, all of that stuff with that one with a 10-week-old baby was another level of challenge. And I think, you know, coming from that, and then with the challenges, and I mean, we saw so much, I suppose, pullback of investment within Romford even alone around 2008. So many of the city firms that had been using a lot of those office buildings as overflow were just pulling back to the city. So it became incredibly challenging, and I suppose I lost my spark for it. I like a project. I suppose I love a sprint, you know. So I think with all of that compounding together, that's why we decided, you know what, we've done 7 or so years. We've built something that we can sell, not for huge profit, but we can walk away with our head held high. It's washed its face, and my goodness, if we learn a lot within that experience.
What did the journey teach you specifically about trust and loyalty? Because that's sort of key in attract and engage the new business that you've made. What did that journey teach you from the sort of the sandwich bar to the company you've got now?
Well, I think if we look at your team and then we look at your customers, I think from a team perspective with trust and loyalty, I think it's recruit for the person who I suppose really gets it and gets the culture that you're bringing to the business, but also don't expect that to be enough. It's about incredible operating procedures and training in a really rigorous way, because the culture and the behavioural fit will never be enough. Ultimately, the team is going to deliver the outstanding experience that you set your stall out for. So without the training, they can be the best cultural fit in the world. But if you haven't documented the standard operating procedure that you want them to follow in a really rigorous way and then trained them, it's going to fall apart somewhere. And then conversely, the trust that you're trying so hard to build with your customer will be lost. So it's like this beautiful dance, you know. We did have incredible loyal customers who we felt like it was we could see through 2007, 2008, just a sense that they were financially challenged. There was a cost of living crisis then. You saw them every day coming in for breakfast, for lunch. You could see changes in buying patterns. But it was still our job to serve them for what they needed and to tweak our menu and to keep the trust. They can trust that they'll come in and they'll find something that fits their budget, that fits their appetite, all of that. And there's so much you can learn from that when you move on into any business. It's the team and it's your customers and it's the dance that happens together. Yeah.
It is like a dance, isn't it? It's one of those where you don't really understand it until you've been in it. I was really fortunate that my nan and her husband used to own a cafe down on the seafront in Southend, and they were. It was, I could see that dance. So I used to work there, and you could see the dance of trust. In fact, it was about around that time actually. Sort of. Well, they owned it for ages, but that time was particularly difficult. And you can really see the dance and as you say, the people coming in and changing their spending habits. And an order, a table of people's order maybe would go from £40 down to £35, and that's not a big change for each one of them. It's only like £1.25 off or something, or whatever. Mass is my strong point, but the idea that if all of your tables do that, that's like some percentage of your income. What is that, like some amount of income? 5%.
Too much. Let's go with too much. But yeah,
you're essentially losing that £5 off of the 4 person's order, and if you did that with every, you're losing £5 every 4 people, like that's quite a lot of £5 is. That being said, how does that work in construction? How could that work in construction? How can those lessons that you've learned apply to the construction industry? Because you've talked about the trust and the customer and those sorts of things, but I'd like to pick your brain. I have opinions. I always have opinions. That's my prerogative. But I'd like to hear yours.
Well, it's trust. Trust remains consistent regardless. We're all individuals. We're all humans. So we have to know what someone is about. It has to align with our values. We have to have seen evidence in order to trust. And in the B2B landscape, the construction sector, or maybe industrial, manufacturing, engineering, they may be quite complex business to business decision making situations that are happening, but it's no different. You have to have built the trust early, and then you have to maintain it. You have to do all you can at every single touch point to keep demonstrating your credibility, your capacity, your capability. Nothing can shake that. And that's the same regardless. And I think that's why when we came to found, attract and engage and start to think about, well, which businesses, which industries do we feel we can make the most difference within? It felt to me that it had to be those businesses where, number one, it was business to business, because that's my background. That's where I learnt my trade. I'm not interested in TikTok. I'm not interested in selling, a lipstick. That's where the most impact can be had, particularly within SMEs, because usually those businesses are led by incredibly capable technical individuals who, because they are really good at what they do, have grown a very successful business to a point, and that trust is embedded because they personally usually know the buyers, the procurement teams at, let's say, the 4 or 5 main tier 1 or 2 contractors, maybe if they're a subby that they're selling into. That trust is embedded over years of doing work together on projects, right? You can't fast track that. But I think the piece that was missing when we started, and is often still missing that I see today, is that it's the jump where you are now trying to work with way more customer groups because you want to grow. You don't have that personal relationship as much anymore. The procurement team maybe have changed. They're younger people coming through. You don't have the personal relationship. You haven't been on golf trips for 10, 15 years with them. What can you do now to replicate the trust effect and build influence? Because that's what you'll need to do in order to grow and win those new contracts, as well as obviously have the right price point.
Yeah.
And that's where it got really interesting for me, because I could see ultimately that I could hopefully make a difference with those businesses to help we kind of loosely call it the ABCs, the attract the right talent, the build the strong reputation, and then the close more of the work that you want. Not just any work, the work you want, because that's the important part.
Well, you focus on your literature anyway for Attract and Engage, you focus on the 95% of people who aren't ready to buy yet. How does that approach work, and why is it so powerful?
Well, it goes back to that piece that we kind of talked about at the beginning, is that as consumer of anything, we're always in the kind of that latent phase. We're fine where we are, thank you. We have a contractor that we already trust for that particular specialism. I don't need a different one. But that's where the brand can really be built. Because if you wait until the invitation to tender goes out to start building a relationship, you're too late. You need to be building brand trust, reputation. You need to be aligning your values. You need to be there, front and centre, early, when they're not in market. And then when the trigger happens, the contractor they have been working with has let them down, or they just need more. They're growing and they're filling out their supply chain. Whatever that looks like, when they're now looking for new partners, you're already in the mix. So if you are one of 3 or 4 or 5, they already feel there is some brand and reputational trust there. You're not starting from scratch. If you think about what happened, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago with more consumer-based marketing and advertising, up until that point, until digital started happening and we started Googling things back then, all of the ad budget would be going into some TV, some print. There might be some leaflet drops. There'd be little coupons in newspapers. There might be some radio. And brands, let's say McDonald's, would understand really, really acutely where the results were coming from. And then all of a sudden, Google digital advertising started happening, and every single spend got attributed back to that one click. But that one click is not the reason someone has chosen you. The reason they've chosen you is because of the 30 or so other situations where they've come across your brand and started to feel that they know it and they trust it. So don't be fooled by thinking it's the final decision, And whenever we look at marketing, whether it's B2B or B2C, you have to look at that whole picture. How have you built trust across the board to enable the yes to be made easy for your buyer?
I love that analogy, because I think that's where, personally, I think that's where construction is going wrong. I'd love to discuss that with you. The idea, I can still remember, this sounds really stupid and really daft, first class windows. I don't know if you know anything about first class windows. Do you ever listen to the radio? Maybe in the 90s and noughties. Okay, so first class windows are arguably Hastings Insurance.
Okay, right.
Okay, so all of these things on the radio. So I still know the phone number for Hastings Insurance because I heard it gazillions of times. Would I, from a kid, I don't know if they're still going. Maybe they are, But the idea of as you say, almost like the touch points of, it's not when I come to. They don't start marketing to me once I need insurance. They market to me for the 10 years before, since I was a kid. First class windows, don't deliberate, Chelmsford 22, 66, 88. Do you know what I mean? Literally, I can remember the tune now. All the Hastings, 0800 00 10 66.
Yeah.
It's not then they're all, I think it's about becoming inevitable, right?
Yes, exactly. It is.
When you cannot forget.
Yeah.
I probably haven't heard that. I don't even know if first class windows are still going. I probably haven't heard that for 20 years, maybe more. But I still know it because it was on every single day on the radio, and that's where, as you say, that click, they're really good for analytics. That click is great for analytics.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy to apportion your investment back. Everyone loves a little bit of definite ROI. Yeah. And there is, with marketing communications, there is always going to be, unless you're spending gazillions of pounds on tracking, there's always going to be a little bit of an element of, which bit works, which doesn't. And that is the old joke, 50% of your marketing works, you just don't know which 50%. And it's a little bit true, especially with brand. Yeah. Especially with brand. But that doesn't mean you can't get a handle on what is working and what isn't. And I think for construction, if you're thinking about, the winning work piece, and it's not just about winning work, it is about building a strong reputation. If you're an SME, you may want to exit at some point. And if you've got a really strong brand, an incredible reputation that means something that's unique within the marketplace, there will be more value in that brand when you come to sell that business later down the line. And also, you want to recruit an incredible team. So there are more reasons than just winning work, but oftentimes that is the most pertinent pressing point, for a business. It's, have you, number one, done some work? If you're tendering for work, have you done some work to really define the work you want to win? Where you can be most competitive, that is most enjoyable for you to deliver, that isn't a massive pain in the arse, that doesn't leave you really exposed, that does lead to the path you want to go in terms of the kind of projects. If you've done that work, have you interrogated the tender documents? From a corporate social responsibility standpoint, from an ESG standpoint, do you understand what it is that the buyer, the customer really wants from you? And have you reverse engineered how you're positioning your business to be like this perfect hand in glove fit? You know, and I think that's the piece that where the most opportunity is, I think, for construction contractors especially, is there's a lot of information out there to help inform you. It's not that you have to go from a completely blank sheet of paper to create this unique brand, because it is difficult. There is information out there that can inform you and steer you to make sure that you appear to be the perfect prescribed fit for your customer.
Well, that sort of takes us on nicely to construction. One of the things we talked about on our phone call before was that construction is fighting a perception problem. Now, that that goes back, and you've spoken to it already, like the touch points of getting people. You know, we have a massive skills gap at the moment. It's super evident, and in the next 5 years, let alone 10, 15 years, we're going to have a real shortage of workers. And that is, you know, from what you're saying, I take that as a bit of a touch point problem, that we start marketing to people when they start wanting a job rather than way before. So how would you market the industry to young people that don't necessarily see themselves in it?
Well, I think, you know, that there's been a really interesting report out from Barber ABI, and I went along to the event last month in London, and it was fascinating because there was a panel there, you know, with kind of Wilmot Dixon, some of the big materials manufacturers, all talking about this exact thing, this real perception problem that construction has got, and skills being a huge part of that. And I think what was fascinating was that what came out of it is that we are raising standards as an industry. But I thought it's not just about raising standards, it's about shaping the stories that help us understand not only how we feel about ourselves, but how we communicate that outwards. When, you know, we need, I think, to be sharing the story and showcasing to younger individuals that are potentially be coming into the industry that it's not like a low value, low innovation, kind of dead end opportunity that you're kind of, because that's what's said to me so often. It's almost like, oh, well, you weren't doing very well in those GCSEs if you kind of looked over there at the construction options. That's crap. You know, and actually,
arguably a stronger word than that, I would have said.
But you know, I mean, what do we expect? There is so much innovation going on within the sector. I think we need to start talking about it externally way more, and positioning the way that the tech industry has done so well for so long as a desirable industry that is, you know, innovative, diverse, welcoming, that actually has, you know, a really wide range of career, because I mean, goodness me, there's so many different careers within construction. It's not just like one single thing, that can provide a solid route, a solid career. And a lot of the time AI is not going to take your job, you know, down the line. So I think that's the important piece. And it's not just going to come from, let's say, the trade bodies doing more and talking more. It's not just going to come from the tier one contractors doing big careers programs. It is going to come from the entire ecosystem getting involved at a national level, I think, with some perception changing campaigns at a grassroots level as well within schools, going in and talking to students from, you know, primary age up about the industry, about the wide range of careers that are available within the industry, and that actually it is, you know, innovative and desirable and something that you just want to look at and, you know, give a little bit of attention to really early on. That's what I think needs to be happening. But we're all responsible for that, ultimately. You know, there are some, just, you know, locally here within Essex, some incredible examples of, I think, contractors who are punching well above their weight in terms of what they're giving back, how they're helping to educate and engage youngsters, you know, investing huge time and energy into it. And I think well done. Of course, you can use that as part of your social value piece. Yeah. Of course you can, and absolutely you should be, but you're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And I think that's when social value, and we haven't talked about, the Procurement Act and the changes to the Procurement Act and how much social value you will need to demonstrate in order to be successfully winning work. But can't the two be like this perfect marriage, that you're doing this great grassroots work, encouraging youngsters into the industry, giving them an opportunity to try it out for size, and then evidencing that within your social value piece in your tender submissions? What's not to love about that?
No, I completely agree, and this is that's sort of part of what you're doing, because you're also part of the Basildon Business Leaders Group, and you also serve as an enterprise advisor. Sorry, I have to look down because that's a real mouthful.
Bit of a mouthful.
An enterprise advisor at the Billericay School. Is that part of your? It sounds really matter of fact. Is that part of you doing your bit? That's not what I mean, but but I guess it is. You don't have a social value quota that you need to hit as your company, but you love business and you love working, helping young people. I guess they're the. How did you get into that? Like what inspired you to get involved in that work?
Well, we're based in Billericay, so we're part of Basildon as a borough. And they've always had a really active business community. It's such a huge economy. It's the biggest economy within Essex. Whoop, whoop, go Basildon. And so I think probably about 2 years ago now, they were really revitalising the peer group community. We rebranded as Basildon Business Leaders. We were absolutely overjoyed that we led that project, did the rebrand, the repositioning piece, and also then were invited to join the board. So it means a lot to us because we're a small business, because all of our clients tend to be within the SME mix. There's ambition, to win more work, to grow even more. And it's just great to be a part of that. So through Basildon Business Leaders, we're running kind of quarterly and monthly events. A big part of it is about connecting people with work-winning opportunities, do meet the buyer type stuff. And that's brilliant to be a part of. Just love that. The enterprise advisor piece, I can't actually remember how that came about. It could be that someone reached out to me because there is like a central government agency that leads on enterprise advisor stuff. I think the aim is that every senior school would have an enterprise advisor and a careers coordinator within the school. Because there is recognition that, for the most part, a lot of schools, the career stuff has really fallen by the wayside. There aren't work experience programs anymore. Schools are really stretched every which way. I'm lucky in that Billericay School, both my children are at Billericay, has a brilliant careers program. Kate Smith leads it. And I think in the borough of Basildon, they're like an absolute kind of best practice example of what you should be doing. So when I joined as the enterprise advisor, and I'm like, I suppose, a critical friend, my job is to plug them in as much as I can to my network and also act as a bit of a sounding board for ideas as to what, from my perspective, how I know businesses would want to engage with the school and how they could, and to connect the dots. So, the school has within its careers programme work experience week for year 11s, work experience week for the sixth form, mock interviews in February. In January, they do a careers fair. And then throughout the year, there's loads and loads of opportunities for businesses from all industries to go in, engage with students from year 7 up through the sixth form in whatever kind of guise that they can. And it's just really fulfilling, I just don't think we can complain as business owners about the youngsters that are coming into the workplace if we haven't done something to welcome them and educate them really early on. We can't expect them to have any clue. Like, we can't roll our eyes when they lack confidence at 18 or whatever on their first day. If we've not allowed them to come in at 14 for a week to help out and just get a sense of what it's all about, we've got to open our doors. And So I just don't like complaining and not doing something about it. So that's really what it is. I want to just help as much as I can for my industry, marketing, media, comms, show what that's all about. But also to encourage, I'm always banging on about it on LinkedIn, encourage our clients, the businesses we work with, our wider community, to just put their hand up and help out in whatever way they can. It could literally be like a couple of hours going in and sitting doing some mock interviews with some year 10s. Or it could be having, 2 or 3 kids in from year 11 in June for work experience week. It doesn't matter what it is. It's really easy to do. It's not cumbersome. And you get so much back from it. The students absolutely love it.
Well, if there's any construction leaders listening right now, which hopefully there will be, what could they do right now to connect with schools and inspire future talent?
Well, obviously, I'm going to massively flag up Billericay School. If you're in that catchment, please, drop me a line and I can connect you in to the school for all of those opportunities. But I'd also say, where's your nearest senior school? Reach out and find out firstly, have they got a careers programme? What opportunity is there for you as a local business to support and get involved with the students? That's it. That's your first question to them. And if they are involved and engaged, they'll have a list of activities that you couldn't get involved in. I think that's the first thing. Just reach out and just say, I'm here and I'm available. And it's, as I say, really, really fulfilling.
Well, you've worked with leaders from tech all the way through to construction and everything in between. What separates good communicators from great ones?
So I think, firstly, it is understanding the end goal of the reason you are communicating. What's the point? Back to that thing right at the beginning. What's the hook?
So what?
Yeah. And that goes for everything. It goes for, I think, communicating with your team, if you're going through some big transitional piece, if you're talking to prospective clients, if you're talking to stakeholders in your local government or, a planning department, whatever it is you're doing, an investor community, what's the hook? Why are you communicating this thing right now? And then secondly, understanding your audience and why they're going to care. That's the piece that we is often missing, and it's the piece that we always go to first, the hook and the audience.
So speaking of hooks, if you were tasked with rebranding construction to Gen Z, where would you start?
Well, I'd definitely start by saying most of the jobs AI's not going to steal from you. Genuinely, it's a human industry for the most part. And
I've seen some robots that have built houses and they're all right.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be a human.
No,
right?
We're a long way off of that. I think we're a long way off. I don't know whether in my lifetime, houses, for example, will be constructed in such a way that the whole housing stock is you change your bathroom, okay, so you unbolt it, it gets craned off and a new one gets bolted on.
3D printed almost.
It might not be in my lifetime. We are going to need certainly skilled engineers across trades for a very long time. So I think there's got to be a piece in that it's a sustainable industry for humans. Aside from the fact that there is so much work going on around, to improve diversity, to make work-life balance more attainable. Yes, projects are complex, challenging. They may well require you to be away from home. There's lots of industries where those factors also apply. So what can we learn from those industries? But I think it's an industry that's here for the long term, and it's welcoming. And once you're in, it's your oyster. Ultimately, make it what you will. Is how I would be talking to the young generation.
Yeah, it does speak to that sort of the branding problem again, doesn't it?
It does.
It's it comes across as this dirty industry where, all you go out, you get dirty and you come home and it's all a bit grimy. Whereas actually, the guys that I meet, and we work in some of the most dirty environments, like bricklaying is a pretty grubby environment, but they love it. They love being outside. They love, the idea of just laying one brick after another. There's something really, and I watch it, this sounds daft. I'm the health and safety guy for GSQ, and I just find myself watching them lay bricks, and they're like, "You're all right." I'm like, "Yeah." It's just so compelling. Just watching a guy lay a brick on top of another brick or next to another brick. It's like this, and that sound of as they wiping them out, it's like. But I couldn't lay bricks if you paid me. Like literally couldn't. I'm sure I could learn. And actually, that's the whole point of this. That it's what it's not for everyone, but it is for anyone. I think is the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can make it what you want to make it. I think it's an industry absolutely where you can become a highly skilled tradesperson, or you can become an entrepreneur and grow your own business. And you don't always know that at 16 when you're leaving school. You don't know what you're capable of. So it's an industry where I believe in a really old-fashioned way, you won't be held back necessarily by your academic ability or your educational attainment or who you were when you were 16. You can just be willing to work hard, put your effort in, listen, apply yourself, and actually you can make it whatever you want to make it. And I think there's not a lot of industries that are still like that. Like marketing as an example, there are situations that I don't have a degree. I did my A-levels and I thought, you know what, I'm not convinced that doing a degree is going to leapfrog me. So I'm going to get it. And I lived in Upminster, so it was super easy. Just get on the train up for a first job in the West End, living at home, so I thought, well, I'm going to do that. First job, I'll do that. And actually, I replaced somebody who did have a degree. So that told me I'm not going to leave this job and go back now to uni. I'm already one step ahead. But that doesn't seem to be the case a lot anymore. I hear of situations now where you could be 15 years into your career going for, let's say, a marketing director role, and they're questioning the fact you don't have a degree. Even though you have 15 years and incredible evidence of your ability, they're looking back. I don't necessarily see that, not necessarily in all elements.
No. But I think if you wanted to be a brain surgeon, you probably need it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's not mix up being in marketing or being in construction with being a brain surgeon. If I was going to go into a theatre, I would definitely want that person to know 100%. Exactly what it is that they were doing. Whereas, I do want that for my house, but the end result isn't I die on the operating table. Do you know what I mean? The end result is we get a do-over. Yeah. I mean, it may not be productive, but you still get the opportunity to fail in that, and becoming, I guess, let's take the brain surgeon, for example. You get the opportunity to fail many times because you're never going to get put in the live environment until you've made all the failures in the practice environments, right? Whereas in construction, you can almost flip that a little bit because you have the ability to make mistakes in a live environment when you're laying bricks or you're doing some joinery or you're doing some gas work, maybe not, but plumbing or electrics. You get the opportunity to make those live mistakes and they can be sort of redone. Yeah. And that's I love it. I'm not from a construction background, but I absolutely love it because of the diverse nature of it and because of the branding problem that we have, and going out to try and fix that is incredible. If you could make one small shift, or if a construction firm could make one small shift tomorrow, that would instantly improve how they're seen, what do you think they could do?
So I would say they should ditch copycat messaging. Right. So if I
can you explain that? I'm a mere mortal. I don't live on the same playing field as you. Tell me what copycat is.
So if what's said on your website could be cut and paste and dropped onto any other competitor website, yawn. Find some blue ocean. Okay. Right?
Like a niche almost.
Absolutely. Or a unique way that you're talking about yourself. There are some messages that you see repeated over and over and over again, and they're not unique. They're a given, on time, on budget, we're passionate about people, all of that stuff is it's a given and it's just vanilla. So I think find a way to say something unique about you and who you are and your business. It should be a given that you're delivering excellence. It should be a given that technically you're incredible, that you're wonderful to your people. That should all be a given. Let's say something unique. Be in the blue ocean, not the red ocean, fighting with your competitors.
So let me push on that a little bit. What would you suggest that might be for? So if I'm someone here who's thinking, do you know what? That's a great idea. Mm-hmm. Arguably, come pay, attract, and engage to do your marketing campaign for you. But maybe a little nugget for them so that you can hook them in.
Absolutely. So it goes back to, right, so who are your competitors, who you keep coming up against time and time again? Do a little map of what their messaging is. Look at your clients. What do they want from the contractors they work with? Look at the tenders, etc. Pull all of that out, the social value stuff, all of it. And then think about what you actually do. Are you doing some social value stuff somewhere? Well, if you are, what is it? Are you all about the next gen? Are you all about waste and recycling? Are you all about a certain operating procedure that you've defined and refined, and actually it's a little bit of a USP for you now? What is it? Map that out. It's that trio, and then you'll find in the middle a sweet spot, which is what we kind of call your story gap. That's the place to be.
That's really good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It leads me. One of my friend Dan runs another podcast. He owns Core 4. You may or may not have heard of them. They work like locally and nationally, but they're looking to do a 4-day week. Which I think is, as you say, that is your story gap. We do a 4-day week, and some people might go, well, but what are you going to do on a Friday, or what are you going to do on a Wednesday? It's like, well, not everyone works. We don't only work 4 days of the week. It's just that our guys, we give them an extra day off in the week so that when we have enough people. Like, that's a great...
I mean, the legs on that story is incredible, because you want to now be evidencing that. You want to be collecting a little bit of data on happiness scores, on all of that stuff. Client happiness scores, because that's quite cutting edge. That's something that in the UK we're always thinking, is it ever possible? Well, they're trialing that. It's like a beta test, on themselves. What is it telling us? That story is incredible. Exactly that. That's when things start to get interesting, and when the conversation you're having with your customer or your prospect is about that. It's values-led conversation. They're intrigued. They're interested. It's not about price.
Yeah, I love it. I love this. I could talk marketing all day. I absolutely love marketing. If I wasn't doing this job, I would probably try and beg someone for a job in marketing. So,
but you know what the sad thing is, though, for most people, marketing is like colouring in a logo, or getting a youngster to do a few social posts. And that's actually, you asked me, another thing that I think that really for the industry to grow up is to start to see marketing for what it is, which is a strategic business operation. It's not just something to give someone who's got a spare bit of time, something to just quickly do on that. If you're serious about building a strong reputation, attracting good talent, winning the right work, you need to be having these conversations and thinking, like your friend you mentioned, Core 4, when they're thinking about a 4-day week, that's the marketing conversation is happening right at the very nub of that idea. Whenever whoever, the MD, whoever came up with that idea, that's when the marketing conversation starts. It's not 6-9 months down the line when, oh shit, we've got to do a quick flyer telling our customers about our 4-day week. That's when the magic happens.
Well, that is it.
Bugbear.
Yeah, no, I'm so with you. I listen to loads of people. I listen to probably too many podcasts. I do a lot of driving, so I get to listen to a lot of podcasts. And marketing ones are my favourite. Rory Sutherland's arguably one of my favourite people in the world. I've never met him. Hopefully, someone asked to get him on here. I was like, okay, we'll work on that, I guess. But we have a skills gap. And we've talked a lot about the skills gap in construction. If you could close it even 5%, how would you do that? Just as a quick fix. I know we've talked a lot about that already, but if you had to pick one thing that would close that skills gap, what would it be?
Well, it's awareness, which is in itself a massive thing, but it's awareness. I think what we need is when you look at the numbers, because they are absolutely shocking, in terms of the gap, and the gap getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then huge projects coming online, like in our area, Sizewell C, Lower Thames Crossing, numerous others that are just going to be sucking skills at a rate of knots. It's just got to be a rapid awareness campaign, and that budget is needed for that, and that has to come centrally from somewhere. Again, not wanting to get political, but that budget has to come centrally from somewhere. We need to see absolutely everywhere, backs of buses, on TikTok. We need to see a purposeful push to educate youngsters that construction is open, there are jobs available. Parents need to feel confident that actually directing their youngster in that route will amount to something. They need to have confidence that industry is a direction they should be encouraging their youngsters to look to. That needs budget, and it needs a really a purposeful campaign that I'd suggest needs to last like a good 2 years to really hammer home to a youngster that this is an industry to look at. And that's a central campaign that would come from some central agency, I would suggest.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm not sure this is particularly a relevant question now, because I feel like we've answered it about 100. Well, I say we. That's the royal we. You've done all the answering. What's one piece of advice you would give a business leader trying to build a brand in a tough market? And I think we've already touched on that. Find your story. Find the story gap, or almost. But if I were to drill down into the story gap, like core 4, the 4-day week, or whatever it is, how do you build that as part of your brand in that tough market?
Yeah. So the tough market means you've got to be even more frugal in how you invest your time and your budget. So let's say, as that example that we've given, your point of difference, as well as a whole host of other stuff, but you're going to be talking about the 4-day week, the cultural piece. So your audience now, ideally, that you're targeting, you want to laser target businesses who give a shit about that. You need to try and find businesses who, on a values level, appreciate the fact that you're going above and beyond with your team for this reason. So, tough market, focus in on the kind of customer that cares. So, how can you find those customers? Well, are they, I don't know, B Corp certified themselves? Are they signed up to some kind of culture mission? Look for the filters, look for the signals that tell you that customer cares about the thing that you care about, and then focus all your time and energy in a tough market, time, energy, budget on getting an opportunity to get in front of that individual. So forget that individual doesn't need you to be everywhere. That individual just needs you to be everywhere they are, and that's really quite different. And that's the wonderful thing about B2B and construction. We're not talking about millions of people here. We're not trying to sell to like some enormous global market. For the most part, it would make a massive difference to your business if instead of, 8 or 9 tier 1 contractors that you sell to 13. That would be like a massive game changer for most businesses that we work with. So let's say you've got 4 or 5 decision makers within those 3 or 4 that you're now trying to target. That's a really small group. So laser in on that and only directly focus your time, energy, budget on those who you think give a shit about the thing that is different about you. That then closes things down enormously. So in a tough market, you can hopefully move the needle a bit quicker and have far less wastage going on all around.
Yeah, that's super insightful. I love marketing so much. It's like it's literally like my favorite thing. And you say, invest in marketing. That's essentially what we've done here. The podcast. Yeah. This podcast is, and I know you have your own podcast. Do, yeah. And that I assume that's part of your marketing strategy.
It is
for your business. You know, and I know that you encourage other people to have podcasts and to share their stories and find the story gap and share it, which is just amazing. This is as I say, I could talk about marketing all day. I love marketing. And I think this is one of the best conversations I've had because you're so knowledgeable in what is a market that everybody should know about. If you're not marketing your business, you're going backwards, essentially. Amazing. Final question. Bit of a tradition we've got. If you could have anyone sitting in the chair that you are sitting in having a conversation with me, who would you pick and why do you think they would be good for this podcast? So
I would pick Jamie Revel, who is the founder of JR Revel, an electrical contractor up in Malden. He is a fascinating story, if you like, because he was a facilities manager, decided to retrain as an electrical engineer because of what he was kind of seeing within the market, and then has grown the most incredible culture-based, I would say, and that's why it's a great story, culture-based electrical contracting firm. Incredible team, jokingly called the Revelers, of course, but in all seriousness, they're like, they're really on it, they're really growing, and I just love the way he's running his business. So I think I'd suggest Jamie.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for coming. This has been one of the most impactful conversations on me, just by the fact that I listen to so much marketing content anyway, and you haven't necessarily said any of the things that I've heard from other people. These are like new things that are being said, which I absolutely love. So,
well, I love that.
Thank you. Well, if someone wanted to get hold of you or someone wanted to consume your content, how would they do that?
So LinkedIn is my preferred social media channel. Can't really stand any of the others. So always find me on LinkedIn and just reach out, Jill with a J at attractandengage.co.uk if you just want to ping me a note, if you're mulling things over, if you're a bit stuck, or if you want to get in touch with Billericay School, another plug for the careers programme, that's where to find me.
And if we wanted to listen to your podcast, where would we find that?
Yeah, so on any platform that you get your podcast, Made in Essex. And thanks for the little plug on that. It is brilliant. That's a bit of a passion project, but absolutely a key tool in my own marketing toolkit. I get to speak to some of the most incredible business founders from across Essex. The county is so entrepreneurial. So, please tune in and enjoy some of those conversations.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.